Along with it,
And uh,
yes. Now, we also saw that if you have any environment variable requirement, okay, and remember, again, this is what you will be applying globally. So any configuration that you're applying on this configure page is going to act as a global configuration. So the same thing will be taken forward to the nodes also. So now in that case, for your environment to do a particular task, if you need any kind of variable, you can put everything together here. Because what happens is when you're running specifically, you will be creating a process. So as in, you know that in the operating system generally. So what happens is every command, whatever you run internally is a process. And for each process, you will be having a set of environment variables that is defined. And if you don't set, then whatever is the default environment variable set, it will be picking it up. So for example, it'll not work here. But if you open any of the Unix system and type env, you can see all the list of environment variables there. So in the same way, now in Windows, on the system properties and the advanced, we create variables, right? So in the same way, anything that you want to set, that could be handled by Jenkins. And during that time, if you need an environment variable, you create it here in the same way. So a couple of them, what I put is the Java home, and since if you want to have Maven running, you can put it like that. Any specific variables that you want to add as an environment variable, just click add the name and then the value, so that this will be taken into consideration whenever you are running any job. Okay. Okay, moving on. Now here, so if you look little down, it shows the URL to access Jenkins. Now, as I said, by default, Jenkins runs on 8080 port. So if you want to run it on a different port other than 8080, then you can change it specifically here. So that once you change and you apply, and after that, the next time if someone wants to access, then they will be accessing it using 8080 or other one that you have set. But by default, this will be the 8080. Okay, now coming to the next thing here, the admin email. Since Jenkins will be maintained by a single person or a group, for every specific activity that is happening in Jenkins, someone has to be notified so that you get alert mails from Jenkins. Say a job is running, a job is not running, or some connectivity issue happened. So like that, there'll be many issues that's happening. So for each of the event, Jenkins will be trying to send a mail. So it's always advisable to put the individual engineer who is taking care of Jenkins, or generally if you're working for a group or a team, then you'll be having a mail alias or a group ID for the team. So you can give it so that all those mails will be coming to that particular group, so people can check it. Okay, so like that, you can give the specific email ID to whom the connections or any issues that happens within the Jenkins should be sent. Okay. Now, again, whatever you're seeing here, by default, all these things are the default options. So if you want to set something globally, you can put it up here. Say in case you're using Git. Okay, and while using Git, you want to have a standard username password for everything, then you can give it here. So remember when we went through the Git class, so for every commit that you're doing, by default, you need to know the username and email so that it can be tracked into the commit. So in the same way, here, if you're performing any specific operations, it'll be useful here. But this is not going to be useful from us because we are not going to do any commit. So if you look, the requirement here is we are doing the operations and the maintenance. So if it is a development activity, what we are doing, then we might have to give all these things. If not specifically, we'll not be giving any of this details. So other than this, the important one again comes to us the email notification. So Jenkins has an option again for each job that we run. We can send notification to users based on certain conditions. So here again, if you want to send an email, we always have to associate with the SMTP server or Simple Mail Transfer Protocol server. So here what you need to do is pretty much talk to your IT team and try to find out what is the mail server you guys are using through which you can send mails. So you give that detail, and if you want, you can give the default suffix of the email. So in companies, if you look, you will be given one email ID, and also the user ID of each user will be associated to the email. So for example, if you take me. So if I'm working into some company, they'll be saying adam.m at companyname.com or .in or whatever is the mail that we'll be going. But at the same time, there will be a user ID for me. So suppose say that Adam is my user ID. So if I just say Adam at the rate thecompany.com, the email, it will still reach the same person. So that is how in the Unix you will be able to send mails and automate. So in case if there is anything that you want to configure in that way, you can always give the suffix. That is, you will give the company name here, whatever the email. And later, when you're configuring the job, if there is a point where you want to send an email to someone, there you just give a comma separated IDs, that is user ID, so that by default it will attach the string whatever that you're giving with this suffix ID. Say for example, like I said, now if my actual email ID is like this, so it will send. So instead of that, if I put the suffix as like this, and later when the jobs are running, when you're trying to set up a job and send some email, all you can do is like this. So you can send mail to persons like this. So automatically it will suffix the end part whatever you're giving and add it to this and then send mail. So this is just an option, other way that you can work out. Okay, but the important thing what you need to know is here. So the environment variable and the first setting that we need to do. So pretty much once you do these two, the default options, whatever that we have is sufficient. Going forward, whenever we need some options that we need to add and corresponding to it, you will be getting a plugin here that we need to add. Okay, but other than that, there is nothing much that we need to do here. Okay, so everything is going to be the default. So the main thing is the configuration for the node where master acts as a slave and the environment variable. So once you're done with this and once we have the required plugins installed, then it's all about how do you create the job and how do you work. Okay, now even before moving to the job, the next one what we need to know is the node configuration. Okay, so this is pretty much not going to take much time, and this is the one that we need. Once this is done, the next thing is where is that you're going to run. That is what is important that we need to configure. So coming to the actual point, yesterday we saw, right? So you're going to do some task and that has to be run on some particular machine. So how will Jenkins know what is the machine, how to connect? So the next important thing what we will have to do is the node configuration. That is, for every slave, whatever that you have on which you want to run the task, you need to configure that details into the Jenkins. So how do you do that? So once again, before doing it, apply and save the changes. Then go back to manage Jenkins, and in the manage Jenkins you can see an option called manage nodes. Okay, so if you click this, you see that there is already a node available and that is called as master. So what is this? This is the one that I was talking to you some time back, that is By default, master also acts as a node. So if there is something where you have not specified where to run, then it will always run on the master. So remember, this is one of the important thing, because when you're setting up Jenkins, many times you'll be having so many jobs that has been set, and if you forget to set which node that it needs to work, then what will happen is it will be running by default on master, and then master will always be very slow and there will be performance issues. So I'll talk about a few things on the performance improvement that you need to do, but keep this in mind. By default, if you don't give anything, it will run on the master, and that is why master itself acts as a node. So going forward, anything that we need to add as a node has to be done through this place. So here, if you click new node, so you have to give the name of the server which the Jenkins will be understanding for reference. Say for example, I'll say test CentOS. Okay, so just some machine, and I'll click OK. So it will be asking us certain options to fill in. So the first thing again now comes is number of executors. So if you look here, just like how we added the details for the master, we are going to give the details for each of the node, because when you're running something, what will happen is Jenkins job will try to come to this machine and run. So like this, how many separate jobs can be run on the same machine? So it's not just that one job will be run on one machine. So if needed, we can run multiple jobs on that machine. So in that case, you need to give the details of number of executors. So here, the number specifies how many jobs can Jenkins run on this machine or node. So if you give one at any point of time, only one can run. So if you say two, this machine can take two jobs from Jenkins and run parallelly, or it's other way, Jenkins can trigger two jobs on this machine. So the next question which might come is, okay, what if you try to run once again? Say for example, now I have this setup, okay? And with this setup, I have given the executor as one. So let's say job A we have configured to run on CentOS same machine. So Jenkins will trigger. So this task will go and it will be running. At the same time, say job B is also configured to run on CentOS. So that time the Jenkins will try to connect to the CentOS and run. But since you have specified the executor is only one, Jenkins will not be able to connect to this machine and run, because the configuration says that at any point in this machine you can run only one job. So in that case, what will happen is this job will go in the queue. So it will be waiting until this job on this CentOS machine gets completed. So once it gets completed, the next one in the queue, that is this job, will get triggered. So like this, if you have more than the specified number of jobs which want to run on a machine or a node, it will basically wait in the queue. So we will see that when you're running the job, specifically, it will show that it is waiting. It is because the node doesn't have as many executors to run, because we have limited it to a particular number. Okay, and again, this depends on the resource available on the machine. So based on your hardware, based on your RAM, memory, space, whatever that we have, we need to decide what jobs that we are going to run and how many such jobs can we run. Okay, so once you choose on the executors, the next thing is remote root directory. So before talking about remote root directory, so does everyone know what happens when you log into a Linux machine? How is that you are able to run something? So if I ask you to type ls command on a machine, so what will you do basically? You will connect to the machine and you will run, right? But What happens there exactly? From where are you running? Do you guys are aware of that?
From PuTTY, remote terminal.
Anywhere.
And also through the SSH
Yeah, but what happens when you log into a machine first time?
For the
particular
first
for
time,
your ID and password.
Okay,
the home directory is initialized. I mean, it's created, but once we use it, it'll
that's half correct. Anyone else?
Root directory nothing but like when we are doing check-in, it will copy the all the source code to that inside the node. Correct.
No, don't. I'm not talking from Jenkins. I'm asking you basic thing. What happens when you log into a Unix machine?
Okay, okay.
Okay. Anyways, understand this. So there's a basic thing. So when we are creating a user account in Unix, okay, for every user account, we need to specify three things. That is, what is the home directory of the user? So what is the home directory? So unlike Windows, Unix is multi-user, right? So that is why in Windows, we don't have to specify where you want to store, because if I log into a machine, I can go to C drive, E drive, whatever is available on my machine and create because it's been owned by me. But on Linux or Unix, it is a multi-user and there's not much of UI over there. So how do you choose where to create files and where is the place where you want to create, because there is no C drive, D drive? So that is when there will be a designated directory given for each user, and that is what called as home directory. So this is the directory where by default whenever you log into a machine, it could be through any way, you will be going to. So you can use PuTTY, you can use SSH, RSH, whatever you want. What is that you're doing? You're logging into the machine. So where is that you have to start? Because in Windows, you know something where to start, but in Linux, where is that you have to start? On connected to a machine, where is that you should go? So that is your default directory where you have all the access. So that directory is called as home directory. Okay. And along with the home directory, now, if you look, there will be a script called login script. So what does the script does? So this script is used to set whatever environment variable is required for a user to create. Because just like in Windows, as I said, you have everything over here. So right click on the PC properties and you will get environment variable. So that is where you are reading. But in Unix, you don't have all those things. So from where will be we creating the environment? So that is when this default login script will be having all the environment variables put it, so that every time when a user connects to a machine, you will create a terminal or a session. So internally, what is that? That is again a process. So for that process, you need an environment. So that environment will be set using this script. Okay, so that is what the second thing happens. And finally, as I said, what is that process? That process where you have all the environment is called as a shell in Unix. Okay, so whatever that you're creating is basically a shell. Shell is nothing but a wrapper wherein using that we will be communicating to the operating system. So whatever that black screen that you get is actually a terminal session or a shell which has an environment, and from that anything that we type will be as a process getting communicated to the operating system. Okay, so these three things gets done. Now in the same way, I was talking about as home directory. So even if you see on Windows, what is this happening here? As soon as I open my command prompt, it is going to a directory. So this is my home directory in Windows, and anything that I type is getting created here, right? it gets executed. In the same way, when you connect to Unix machine, it will go to the home directory, and any command that you're running by default will be running like this. So for example, if you just say SSH user at the ram machine and you give some command to type like this, what will happen? By default, whatever command that you're giving will be run inside the home directory of this user on this machine. It's just like you connect SSH as the user, and then once you connect, what will happen? It will go to the home directory. So it will be in the home directory of the user, and there you will be running this ls. So it's the same way how you do. So now be clear, if you're running anything, the first command or the first place where you go is the home directory of the machine assigned to you where you will be running it. So in the same way, coming to Jenkins. So if you see here, I was telling when we want to run this job, Jenkins will connect to this particular machine. All right. So when it connects to the machine, where exactly should it run this tasks? That is the question. Because when you're running Jenkins, you will be running Jenkins as a specific user who has created the job. But where exactly you will be running this, because the machine has so much of directories, different kind of folder structures, everything. So where exactly it should run? So that is what we will be specifying it as remote root directory. So every node which you are adding up should have a remote root directory, which is nothing but it is the directory which will be available in each of the machine. That means on every node or the server, you create a folder, and this is the folder which you will give it as remote root directory. And every time when Jenkins is connecting to this specific machine, so now if this job has to connect to CentOS, what it will do while connecting, it will read the information here and it will say that, okay, this is the remote root directory. So it will directly go to the remote root directory of this machine that you have configured. And inside this directory, you will be running this task. Okay. So it is not that it will be running it anywhere. It will be specifically running it inside the remote root directory. So remember this, remote root directory is the directory where the job will be running on each of the node. So it is very important for us to create a directory and specifically put it as remote root directory. Getting it?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And next thing, labels. So what is label? Okay. Now going back to this concept. So if you remember while explaining Jenkins in the first session of Jenkins, I said one word that Jenkins is going to act as a cron server replacement, and it has the ability to ensure that if something goes down, it can always connect to some other server. That means now, say you want to run this job on this machine, and while you are trying to connect, say this machine is not reachable or it is down, then what will happen? The job will not get triggered, right? Because it doesn't have any machine. But it doesn't mean that if you have tied up this job to this server, and if this server is not there, it will not go back to master. It will go to master only if you have not told any node to be used. But if you say this job has to run specifically on this node, then if this node is not available, it will not run. So now what will happen in that case? So it will be a problem for us, right? So that is when what we can do is we can group similar nodes, okay, and create a tag exactly. So what we can do is we can simply, I can create a group. So let's say I have one more machine. Okay, now maybe this is CentOS 1. I can create one more node, okay, and CentOS 2. So now what I can do is I can create a group out of this. So, so that group is what we call it as the label. So label is nothing but the name that you're going to give for this group. So now whenever you are assigning a node for a machine, sorry, for a Jenkins job, you will not be giving the node name. Rather, we will give this label or the group. So what is the difference here is now in this label or group, you have two machines. So now if I tie up a job to a particular label, say when this job has to run, it will come to the label, and in the label, it will see what is the server which is available. So based on the availability, it will be picking up any server which it can reach, and on that it will be running. So for instance, if CentOS 1 is down, then automatically Jenkins will go to the next one and pick up whatever is available. Or let's take a scenario where I had given the executors as one for each one of them. So even though both the machines are up and running, when it comes to pick up one server, if it picks up CentOS, it is up and running. But the number of executors in the CentOS 1 is 1. So that means we cannot run more than one here, right? So what will happen in that case? It will automatically try to pick the next available. So like this, if we specify a particular group, it'll automatically pick a server whichever is available, and this group is what we call it as label. So whenever we are creating a machine or configuring a node, you have to give the name of that group to which this machine will be associated, so that you can keep on adding as many machines that you want into a group. So here, if you give a name or a string, what will happen is Jenkins will automatically add this machine to this group. So going forward, if you want to add any other machine, in the same way, when you are configuring a new machine, you just give the same label so that this machine and the new machine will be part of the group. Okay, so like that you can add as many nodes, and you can also add as many labels for each name, so it will work. So basically label is nothing but the group name which you will be identifying. Okay, so once you have given these two things, the next thing is usage. So what do you mean by usage here? So if you see, by default, any node can be picked if you don't specify. That means, suppose if you just say use as much as possible, any job can come and trigger if you have configured this node into the Jenkins. So even without a job saying that run on this, if you have just specified a node as use as much as possible, then Jenkins will try to use it regardless of a job has been attached to a node or not. It will always use. So that is when we have to use the other one called use it only if the job which you're going to run has the label details of this machine. So suppose if this machine has a label, and when you are configuring this job, if you say or if you have given that to use this label, only then the machine which is a part of this label can be used by this job. If not, it cannot use. So like that, you can make use of a machine either directly, or you can restrict saying that only if the job tells to use the label, then you can use this machine because this machine is part of this label. Suppose if this job doesn't just say the label but it is trying to use, then it will not be able to use because you are restricting. So that is how you can choose how you want to work on that. Okay, so that restriction that you can use either to use it or to make sure that only if the label has been given. So this is just from the usage perspective. The next thing, how do you connect? So now you gave the details about which group that it should be part of, and then we also saw what is the remote root directory on which, if you are going to connect to this machine, where you have to run. Now, how should the Jenkins master connect to this? That is the next thing that you have. So if you look, there are a lot of options on which we can use. Suppose if the node, that is this machine, is a Windows machine, then we can connect it using a Windows service. So you can create a service in Jenkins so that it will connect to that machine. Or if this is a Unix based machine, like CentOS, Red Hat, whatever it is. So you can connect using SSH. So that is one way of doing it. Okay. But other than this too, since everything what you're running in Jenkins is based on Java, the simplest and most effective way of connecting is using Java Web Start method. Okay, so this is the default way that you need, wherein you don't have to give all this username, passwords, and all those headache is not required. So choose this, and once you choose, then we will see how it will get connected, because it's not going to connect anything because you have not given any details here, right? Practically, if you see, I'll be just giving only the name, the complete name of the machine, which the domain name. But just by saying Java, how does it connect? So it doesn't know where exactly the machine is, right? So there is a way to do it, but the best way to do that is Java Web Start. And once you do it, the next option that we have is availability. So availability refers here as when do you want the master to be connected to this? So do you want the Jenkins master to be connected to this always, or do you want to connect it only when there is a need? So like that you can choose, because this option is useful when you are putting a production instance and you have like more than 100 nodes, right? The Jenkins performance again will come down. So if it keeps on connecting to all the machine, there is some process that it is doing to connect. So that process will run on the machine where you have installed Jenkins. So there is so much of load, so much of Java process or Java threads that will be created. So it'll always be slowing down the performance. So one of the way that to reduce is, don't keep it online. You can choose whenever that is scheduled or whenever that you want to run a job, only at that point of time connect to that machine, and in the other time you be idle. So that is what the availability refers to. Okay, so once you have given these much of details, the next thing, if you look here, it also has the environment details. So what does this mean? So as I mentioned, whatever environment that you have set in the node, that is previously which we saw using the configure system, that acts as a global. So the same value can be passed on to here also. But for some specific reason, if you want a specific value to be passed for all the job that you're going to run on this, then you can check the values and put it locally, so that when Jenkins connect to this node, in that point of time, it will be using this environment variables and not all the other time. So like that, you can specify what is the environment variable that you need. Suppose if there is nothing, then whatever that you have specified in the configure system, that itself will be taken as a global value. Okay, so this is what you need to do. Now, to practice, you guys need a machine. Now, you might have a separate machine, but it's not feasible to practice, right? What will happen is you might create a new VM, but you need to put the VM into the network so that from your Windows machine or from your laptop, you will be or you should be able to connect to this VM, right? For that, if you're not knowing the network connection, it will not be easy. Maybe you can create a VM, but you can work on the VM, but this is something you have to connect from one machine to the other machine. So for that, it has to be in the network. So what I would suggest for practicing this is you can use your own laptop or your own machine on where your Jenkins is running as the same machine, because Jenkins doesn't know what exactly this machine is. So whatever may that you say to the Jenkins to connect, it will just connect, but it will never know whether it is connecting to the same machine or some other machine. So what do I mean by that is, even though I have given it as a CentOS machine here, it is just a name. Internally, what I'm going to do is I am going to ask Jenkins to connect to the same laptop on which I am working, but Jenkins will think that it is connecting to CentOS, so that for your practice, you can see how exactly it works. So for now, assume that this CentOS machine is nothing but my own laptop. Okay, so then what and all are the things that we need to do? So the very first thing we need to do is remote root directory, right? So now in my machine, what I'll quickly do is I create a folder called Jenkins. Okay, so C Vesva Jenkins, this is what I've created. So I'll give this as a remote root directory. So now whenever we ask Jenkins to do a job using this machine, it will connect to this, which is nothing but it is connecting to the same laptop. And in that, it will go to this directory and do the task whatever we want. So here, so whenever this comes to this test OS machine, then it will go to this directory called C Vesva Jenkins, and inside it, it will be running all the tasks. That is what it means. Okay, and then for the label, let's use a label called test. Okay, so I'm giving the label as test. So once this much has done, save it. So now if you look, it shows a red indication. This means you have just configured the machine, but you have not yet connected. Okay, so the reason with that is you need to tell more details about the machine, because we have chosen the Java web start method. So that we call it as a headless method also. So if you look here, there is two ways of running it. So either is you can run a agent from the node so that this service, whatever you are running, will be connected to the master, or what you can do is you will have a file called slave.jar. Okay, so all you have to do is download the slave.jar, take it to this particular machine, copy it, and then from the directory where you have copied this, run this command. Okay, so for instance, I'm downloading this. Okay, so if I download, where it will go, it will come to my local machine, right? So this is the machine on which I am treating it as CentOS. So assume that I have downloaded now and I've copied over to that CentOS, which is nothing but my own machine. So where exactly is it present? It will be present in the download folder. Okay, so here you see we have a file. So now from this directory where we will just run this. So if you look closely, where am I running this? Don't think that I'm running from my machine, but in reality, what you will be doing is you will be connecting to this CentOS machine, copy this slave.jar from wherever you have downloaded, and from there you will be running this. So typically, this command has to be run from the slave or from the node which you are trying to connect to the Jenkins. So in that way, if you look, it uses the slave.jar and it will be connecting to the path here. So what is this path? So typically if you see here, it says localhost. The reason behind it is the same machine on which we are just practicing. But if you go to the production, you will be running the Jenkins from some specific host, and when you try to connect to this whatever server or node that you have set up, from there you will be connecting to the master. Getting it? So
Yeah, yes,
if you
yeah.
look again, be clear. So suppose, say if this was a machine, say like I have a machine like this, I will go to that, and from there I will try to download this file, and from that machine I will be running, so that it will be connecting to the Jenkins master. Now everything is a local machine, that is why you are seeing localhost. But if the same thing you had it given different machine name, you will be getting the name of the machine, so that from this node, when you run this command, you will be connecting to the master. So now if you look, master is connected to the CentOS, or since you ran this command, this slave.jar has brought in a web Java method to connect to the master, which is available in this place. So now if you refresh this, you see it shows it is available, and it is part of a label called test. So if you go back, you can see that you have the node available here. Getting it?